When the HOA towed Sarah's wheelchair van, they didn't know she was a retired K-9 officer with a badge of vendetta and a file of their secrets. But as she exposed their corruption, the real fight began, not just for her home, but for every family silenced by petty tyranny. Now, with neighbors rallied and a lobbyist gun pointed at her, Sarah smiles. They picked the wrong woman to mess with. Corruption thought it had won. It didn't count on a disabled cop with nothing left to lose, and everything to protect. The van was just the beginning. The revolution starts now. Sarah Mitchell wheeled herself onto the porch of their new home, the morning sun glinting off the metal rails of her wheelchair ramp. The house, a cozy 1970s ranch style with sprawling oaks in the yard, was perfect. Nestled at the edge of Sycamore Ridge, it promised peace after years of city noise. Her husband, Jake, lugged a box labeled kitchen up the ramp, grinning. "No more upstairs apartments," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "This is ours." The realtor had assured them the property was exempt from the HOA, a relic from before the neighborhood's expansion. Sarah had double-checked the deed herself. Lot 14, exempt from covenants, conditions, or restrictions imposed post-1985. A legal shield against petty rules. Or so they thought. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. A woman with ice blonde hair and a clipboard stood flanked by 2 men in polo shirts. "Eleanor Matthews," she announced, her voice syrup-sweet. "HOA president. Here for your welcome packet and dues." Jake frowned. "Our paperwork says we're exempt." Eleanor's smile hardened. "Everyone here contributes. Uniformity is key." Her gaze slid past Jake to Sarah's ramp. "That eyesore, it violates aesthetic standards. Remove it." Sarah wheeled forward, her voice steady. "The ramp stays. It's ADA compliant." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Rules apply to everyone, even special cases. The threat hung in the air as she left. That night, Sarah lay awake, Jake snoring beside her. Uniformity. The word gnawed at her. She'd heard before in police briefings about gang territories, not suburbs. The next morning, flyers appeared in their mailbox. Violation notice. Non-compliant ramp. Fine, $200. Sarah crumpled it. We're fighting this. But Eleanor wasn't done. By noon, a city inspector arrived, citing an anonymous complaint about their sprinklers. "Water restriction violation," he mumbled, avoiding Sarah's glare. That evening, their trash cans were tagged for being 3 inches too close to the curb. Jake stormed to the HOA office, deed in hand. The secretary shrugged. "Take it up at Wednesday's meeting." The meeting notice came with a footnote. Non-compliance may result in escalated measures. Sarah's van was next, parked in their driveway. Its side bore a faded decal. K-9 support unit retired. Eleanor deemed it commercial advertising. A warning note fluttered under the wiper. Garage vehicles overnight. Final notice. "She's baiting us," Sarah said, fingers drumming her wheelchair armrest. Jake sighed. "Let's just park it inside." But the garage was packed with unpacked boxes. "Tomorrow," he promised. Tomorrow never came. 15 years earlier, Sarah had been Sergeant Mitchell, commanding a K-9 unit. Her partner, Max, a German shepherd with a nose for narcotics. They'd raided meth labs, tracked fugitives, until a chase gone wrong. A suspect's bullet had missed her heart, but shattered her spine. The department offered a desk job. She'd refused. "I'm not a pity hire." Now, as she adjusted her leg braces each morning, she heard Max's ghostly bark, felt the weight of her badge and memories. The van, customized with a ramp and hand controls, was her last tether to that life. "You're still the strongest person I know," Jake said once, after carrying her upstairs in their old apartment. She'd sold her service weapon, but kept her badge, polished and framed. "For the days I forget," she joked. But today, staring at Eleanor's latest violation, she didn't feel strong. She felt cornered. Sarah's physical therapy appointment was at 10 a.m. At 9:45, she wheeled outside to an empty driveway. A boot clamped her van's front tire. A tow truck idled nearby, driver smirking. "Violation HOA 12C," he said, waving a form sign by Eleanor. Sarah's pulse roared. This is illegal. That van is ADA protected. Tell it to the HOA, he shrugged. Eleanor watched from her porch, sipping coffee. Sarah dialed Jake, her voice shaking. They're taking the van. By the time Jake raced home, the van was gone. Sarah sat stranded on the driveway, her face a mass of fury. She can't do this. She did, Jake muttered, Googling impound fees. $4.50. Cash only. That night, Sarah unboxed her old uniform. The fabric still fit, the metal's cold against her chest. Tomorrow, she told Jake, we fight back. The impound lot reeked of oil and desperation. Sarah glared at the manager. That van is federally protected. Release it. Now. He shrugged. Pay up or leave. Jake handed over the cash, seething. As they inspected the van, Sarah spotted fresh scratches on the ramp. Evidence, she hissed, snapping photos. Back home, she called Captain Rodriguez, her former boss. Eleanor Matthews, Sycamore Ridge HOA. I need backup. Rodriguez arrived with 2 squad cars, lights flashing. Neighbors peeked through blinds as he confronted Eleanor. Harassing a disabled veteran? Real smart. Eleanor paled. This is a misunderstanding. Save for the judge, Rodriguez cut in. By dusk, the boot was gone, the van restored. But the war had just begun. The van's return was a hollow victory. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, photos of a scratched ramp spread before her. Jake paced, clutching a coffee mug like a lifeline. We need proof, she said. Not just for us, for everyone she's bullied. By midnight, they'd installed 4 security cameras. One aimed at the ramp, another at the driveway, the rest covering the yard. Paranoid much? Jake joked, but his laugh died when Sarah pulled out a folder labeled HOA Corruption. Inside, violation notices, Eleanor's threats, and impound receipt. We're not just fighting for our home, Sarah said. We're fighting for the Thompsons, the Gonzaleses, everyone she's crushed. The next morning, a lawyer's number sat circled on the fridge. Maggie Chin, housing discrimination and ADA specialist. Sarah dialed, her voice steel. We need a cease and desist. And a lawsuit. Maggie's reply was crisp. Document everything. Even the scratches. The ADA doesn't tolerate sabotage. Frank Waverly was pruning roses when Sarah wheeled over. At 78, he had the posture of a soldier and the wit of a spy. Heard about your van, he said, not looking up. Eleanor's got a taste for blood. Sarah hesitated. Our deed says we're exempt. But she won't back down. Frank stabbed his shears into the soil. Follow me. He led her to his garage, where a dusty survey map hung. See this? He tapped the boundary line. Your lot's the original farmstead. The HOA? Built around you like mold on bread. He handed her a box of vintage American flags. Plant these along your property line. They're pre-1985, grandfathered, like your house. Let Eleanor try to remove them. That afternoon, Sarah and Jake planted the flags. By dusk, Eleanor's car screeched to a halt. Remove those, she demanded, phone recording. Sarah smiled. Violation HOA 12D. Flags only allowed on holidays. But these flags are from 1976. Check your bylaws. Eleanor's silence was sweeter than any rebuttal. Retaliation came at 3 a.m. A brick shattered their living room window, wrapped in a note. Leave. Jake called 911 while Sarah scanned the cameras. The footage showed a hooded figure. 2 generic ID. She's escalating, Jake muttered. The police wrote it off as teen vandalism, but Sarah knew better. By noon, city inspectors swarmed their yard again, this time for a rat infestation reported anonymously. No droppings, no nests, the inspector sighed. But I have to file a report. Worse, a concerned neighbor emailed a local paper. Disabled veteran endangers community with ramp. The editor, a friend of Sarah's K-9 unit, spiked the story. But there'll be more, he warned. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. $450 towing fee. Next time, it'll be $1,000. She forwarded it to Captain Rodriguez. His reply was, building a file, stay sharp. Maggie Chen arrived with a stack of subpoenas. Let's dig into Eleanor's empire, she said, spreading HOA financials on the table. The records were a maze of shell companies. Matthews Landscaping, Sycamore Security LLC, Rapid Recovery Towing. Sarah's police instincts kicked in. Look, payments to Matthews Landscaping match your vacation home's tax records. Jake frowned. She's laundering HOA dues? Maggie nodded. And the towing company? Owned by her brother-in-law. Every violation, they enforce lines or pockets. Frank ambled in with a bottle of bourbon. Heard you're digging graves. Need a shovel? He dropped a folder labeled HOA Emails 2018 to 2023. Inside, Eleanor's threats to a family evicted over a food truck. Pay $5,000 or lose your home. Sarah's hand shook. This is extortion. And this, Frank said, tapping a photo of Eleanor's vacation home, is where your rent money went. The tow truck driver returned, not to seize a van, but to talk. Name's Ray, he said, hat in hand. I'm done being Eleanor's attack dog. Sarah's camera rolled as he confessed. She'd text addresses. We'd tow, split the fee 50/50ths. Mostly targets she didn't like, immigrants, retirees, veterans. Ray handed over a ledger. Dates, addresses, payouts. Sarah's address was circled in red. She wanted you gone. Said you were too loud. Jake scoffed. Loud? Sarah's the quietest person I know. Ray shrugged. Loud with principles. That night, Sarah uploaded the footage to the cloud and texted Captain Rodriguez. We've got her. Sarah sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop illuminating the shadows under her eyes. Spread before her were Ray's ledger, Frank's property maps, and Maggie Chen's legal briefs. Jake leaned over her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. You've got her, he said. This is enough to bury Eleanor. Sarah shook her head. Not yet. She's got the board in her pocket. We need them to turn on her. She opened a video file, a clip of Eleanor at community picnic last summer, laughing as she handed out HOA compliance awards to sycophantic neighbors. See how they hang on her every word? We need to crack that loyalty. A knock interrupted them. Frank stood at the door, holding a casserole dish. Wife's famous lasagna, he said. Brain fuel. He glanced at the evidence. You're going to the meeting tomorrow? Wouldn't miss it, Sarah replied. Frank lowered his voice. Judith Keating, the HOA treasurer. She's been quiet, but she's no fan of Eleanor. Find her. That night, Sarah rehearsed her speech in front of the mirror, her police medals pinned to a blazer. Jake watched silently, then said, You're not just doing this for us, are you? She met his gaze and the reflection, for everyone who thought they had no voice. The morning of the meeting, Captain Rodriguez pulled into their driveway in an unmarked cruiser. Sarah wheeled out to meet him, surprised to see his uniform crisp, his posture rigid. You look like you're serving a warrant, she joked. Might as well be, he said, handing her a folder. Eleanor's brother-in-law owns Rapid Recovery Towing. We traced $18,000 in HOA payments to his personal account. It's textbook fraud. Sarah flipped through the documents. Will this hold up in court? With Ray's confession? Absolutely. But tonight, he paused, eyeing her uniform. You're not just a victim. You're a cop again. Use that. As Rodriguez left, Sarah's phone buzzed. An anonymous text. Skip the meeting. Or the next brick goes through your skull. She showed Jake. They're scared. Good, he said, loading the evidence into a box. Let's make them terrified. The HOA meeting was held in a sterile community hall, its walls lined with framed bylaws and Eleanor's smiling portrait. Sarah wheeled in, flanked by Jake and Maggie Chun. Neighbors murmured as she took a seat front and center, her medals glinting under fluorescent lights. Eleanor gavelled the room to order. First order, non-compliant homeowners. She glared at Sarah. You have 2 minutes. Sarah rolled forward, her voice amplified by the room's silence. Our property is exempt. Here's the deed, the survey, and your own 1985 bylaws. She slid copies to the board. But this isn't about a ramp or a van. It's about this. She nodded to Jake, who projected Ray's confession onto a screen. The room erupted as Eleanor's kickback scheme unfolded. Lies! Eleanor shouted, slamming her gavel. This meeting is adjourned. Not yet. Captain Rodriguez strode in, 2 officers behind him. We have questions, Mrs. Matthews. Starting with why $200,000 of HOA dues paid for your pool. A board member dropped her pen. The room exploded. A woman in the back stood, waving a towing receipt. You took my son's car. Over a bumper sticker. Another voice. You fined me $500 for a dead lawn during a drought. Frank stood, steadying himself on his cane. And you threatened to foreclose on the Thompsons for a fence they never built. Eleanor's composure cracked. These are baseless accusations. Sarah raised a hand, silencing the crowd. Baseless? Let's ask Judith. All eyes turned to the treasurer, who had been quietly shuffling papers. Judith stood, her hands trembling. I tried to warn you, Eleanor, but you wouldn't listen. She opened a ledger. Page 42, payments to Matthews Landscaping. Page 103, $10, 0004, security cameras that only cover your house. The room gasped. Eleanor lunged for the ledger, but Rodriguez blocked her. Sit down, ma'am. Judith pulled a flash drive from her purse. Eleanor kept 2 sets of books. The real ones are here. She plugged it into Jake's laptop. Spreadsheets flooded the screen, embezzlement dating back a decade. Sarah locked eyes with Eleanor. You didn't just steal money. You stole trust. The board members huddled, whispering frantically. One by one, they raised their hands. I vote to remove Eleanor as president. Eleanor's face turned crimson. You ungrateful leeches. I built this community. No, Sarah said. You held a hostage. As Rodriguez let Eleanor out, reporters swarmed. Sarah stayed behind, watching neighbors hug, cry, and swap stories. Jake squeezed her shoulder. You did it. She shook her head. We did it. Eleanor's mansion loomed under a stormy sky, its manicured hedges trembling in the wind. Inside, she paced her study, shredding documents and stuffing cash into a leather briefcase. The police were hours away from a warrant, but her instincts screamed run. A knock shattered the silence. Mrs. Matthews? A timid voice, her assistant, Clara. The bank just froze the HOA accounts. They're asking about the landscaping payments. Eleanor's laugh was brittle. Tell them to talk to my lawyer. They already did. He quit. The phone rang. Eleanor ignored it, but the voicemail blared. This is Captain Rodriguez. We have a warrant to search your properties. Be advised. She hurled the phone against the wall. In the garage, she loaded the briefcase into her Mercedes, only to find the tires slashed. A note under the wiper. You don't get to run. Sarah. Eleanor collapsed against the car, her perfect facade crumbling. The walls were closing in. The news van spotlight turned Sarah's driveway into a stage. Reporter Melissa Shaw thrust a microphone at her. How does it feel to expose one of the county's biggest HOA scams? Sarah shielded her eyes. This wasn't about me. It's about every family Eleanor exploited. Footage aired hourly. Eleanor's vacation home, Ray's tearful confession, Judith's ledger. Neighbors became overnight celebrities. Mrs. Patel tearfully recounting her $500 lawn fine, Frank grinning as he waved the 1976 flags. But not all attention was welcome. A brick sailed to the Mitchells' window at 2 a.m., shattering glass. The attached note stopped the lies. Jake installed floodlights while Sarah scrolled through hateful comments online. HOA haters ruin communities. Disabled? More like entitled. Why are they blaming us? Jake muttered. Sarah closed her laptop. Because it's easier than admitting they let her win. The community center buzzed with tension. Gone were Eleanor's portrait and rule books. In their place, a handmade banner. Take back Sycamore Ridge. Martin Cooper, the HOA's former vice president, stood at the podium. Nominations are open for interim president. A hand shot up. I nominate Sarah Mitchell. The room erupted. Sarah froze. I'm not here to lead. I'm here to fix. Frank stood, cane tapping. You already are. The vote was unanimous. Martin became president. Sarah chaired the Accessibility Committee, but dissent simmered. A faction of Eleanor loyalists, led by a slick lawyer named Greg, argued for stability. Reckless changes will tank property values. Sarah wheeled to the front. Stability should mean fear. Let's vote. Keep the HOA voluntary or dissolve entirely. Hands rose like a wave. Voluntary. Greg stormed out. This isn't over. Sarah's committee met in her living room. Blueprints for accessible playgrounds spread across the floor. Mrs. Patel brought samosas. Frank doodled ramp designs on napkins. The recovered funds cover Phase 1, Sarah said, but we need city approval. The city planner, a weary man in a wrinkled suit, frowned. Your ramps exceed code. Why the fuss? Because code isn't enough, Sarah said. Ever tried opening a door with a wheelchair and a coffee? He blinked. I'll fast-track the permits. Progress was swift until Greg filed a lawsuit. Misuse of HOA funds. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Drop the playground. Or else. She forwarded it to Rodriguez. We're not stopping. Dawn broke as police cars surrounded Eleanor's home. Captain Rodriguez pounded the door. Eleanor Matthews, open up. Inside, Eleanor clutched a bourbon glass, her hair unkempt. She'd burned most of the evidence, except one file. Blackmail, judges, council members, even the mayor. The door splintered. Rodriguez stepped in, flanked by K-9 units. You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and extortion. Eleanor smirked. You'll need more than handcuffs to silence me. As they led her out, she locked eyes with Sarah, who watched from the street. This isn't over, Eleanor hissed. Sarah smiled. For you, it is. At the station, Eleanor's mugshot flashed across every screen. The caption, HOA Queen Dethroned. The air buzzed with the scent of grilled burgers and fresh-cut grass as Sycamore Ridge hosted its first block party in years. Banners reading Stronger Together fluttered between oak trees. Kids raced through sprinklers, while adults clustered around picnic tables laden with dishes from a dozen cultures. Mrs. Patel's samosas, the Gonzalez family's tamales, Frank's rebel ribs slathered in bourbon sauce. Sarah wheeled to the crowd, Max's successor, a service dog named Luna, trotting beside her. Neighbors waved, their smiles looser now, freed from Eleanor's shadow. Yet tension lingered. Greg and his faction hovered at the edges, arms crossed, muttering about chaos. At the mic, Martin raised a beer. To new beginnings in real community. The crowd cheered, but Greg's voice sliced through the noise. And to the lawsuit you'll drown in when this experiment fails. A hush fell. Sarah rolled forward, Luna's leash taut. Greg, if you're so worried about lawsuits, let's talk about the one you filed to stop the playground. She nodded at Jake, who projected the lawsuit onto a bedsheet screen. Page 4. Funded by Elite Property Management, a shell company tied to Eleanor's brother-in-law. Gasps erupted. Greg paled. You're bluffing. Sarah smirked. Check your inbox. His phone dinged. A forwarded email from Elite Property Management. Terminating your retainer. Cooperate with authorities. Greg fled, tires screeching. The party roared back to life, louder now, as Mrs. Patel pressed a samosa into Sarah's hand. You've united us, dear. Even the doubters. The air buzzed with the scent of grilled burgers and fresh-cut grass as Sycamore Ridge hosted its first block party in years. Banners reading Stronger Together fluttered between oak trees. Kids raced through sprinklers, while adults clustered around picnic tables laden with dishes from a dozen cultures. Mrs. Patel's samosas, the Gonzalez family's tamales, Frank's rebel ribs slathered in bourbon sauce. Sarah wheeled to the crowd, Max's successor, a service dog named Luna, trotting beside her. Neighbors waved, their smiles looser now, freed from Eleanor's shadow. Yet tension lingered. Greg and his faction hovered at the edges, arms crossed, muttering about chaos. At the mic, Martin raised a beer. To new beginnings and real community. The crowd cheered, but Greg's voice sliced through the noise. And to the lawsuits you'll drown in when this experiment fails. A hush fell. Sarah rolled forward, Luna's leash taut. Greg, if you're so worried about lawsuits, let's talk about the one you filed to stop the playground. She nodded to Jake, who projected the lawsuit onto a bedsheet screen. Page 4. Funded by Elite Property Management, a shell company tied to Eleanor's brother-in-law. Gasps erupted. Greg paled. You're bluffing. Sarah smirked. Check your inbox. His phone dinged. A forwarded email from Elite Property Management. Terminating your retainer. Cooperate with authorities. Greg fled, tires screeching. The party roared back to life, louder now, as Mrs. Patel pressed a samosa into Sarah's hand. You've united us, dear. Even the doubters. The old community garden, once a patch of weeds policed by Eleanor's aesthetic rules, now burst with raised beds and wheelchair-accessible paths. Sarah knelt, as much as her braces allowed, planting tomatoes beside Mr. Thompson, the food truck owner Eleanor had evicted. Never thought I'd be back, he said, patting soil around a pepper plant. After she killed our business. Sarah handed him a trowel. Grow something she can't touch. Nearby, kids painted murals on the newly ADA-complied clubhouse walls. A phoenix rising, a German Shepherd Max mid-leap. Frank supervised, sipping lemonade. Art's better than bylaws. But healing wasn't linear. At a support group meeting, Mrs. Gonzalez broke down. They towed Juan's car 6 times. He dropped out of college to pay the fines. Sarah squeezed her hand. We're filing a class action. Every family Eleanor hurt will be repaid. Later, Sarah found Jake in their garage, staring at his layoff notice. They can me. Budget cuts. She wheeled closer. Eleanor's allies or Greg's? He crumpled the paper. But we've survived worse. Chapter 24. The Ripple Effect. The email subject line glowed. Urgent. Help us stop our HOA tyrant. Sarah leaned back, exhausted. Dozens of pleas flooded her inbox. From retirees in Arizona, a single mom in Texas, a veteran in Ohio. Melissa, the reporter, filmed her response. How does it feel inspiring a national movement? Sarah rubbed Luna's ears. Terrifying. But if my fight helps one family sleep easier, worth it. At a statewide housing conference, Sarah took the stage. HOA should protect, not prey. Let's pass laws to hold them accountable. The crowd erupted. Afterward, a woman in a wheelchair approached. My HOA fined me for a ramp they approved. I didn't think I could fight. Sarah handed her a card. Call me. We'll fight together. But power attracts enemies. As Sarah left, a black SUV idled nearby. Inside, a man snapped her photo. The playground ribbon cutting drew hundreds. Accessible swings, sensory gardens, and ramps woon around a castle-themed structure. Kids in wheelchairs race alongside friends, their laughter drowning out the past. Sarah gripped the scissors, flanked by Frank, Martin, and Captain Rodriguez. This isn't just a playground, she said. It's proof that when we fight for each other, we win. The ribbon fell. Cheers erupted. But as Sarah turned, she spotted the black SUV again. The window rolled down. A man in sunglasses nodded coldly. Then a gunshot. The crowd screamed. Sarah ducked, shielding a child. Luna barked furiously. Rodriguez tackled the shooter, Greg, wild-eyed. You ruined everything. Sarah stood, trembling but unhurt. No, Greg, you did. As police led him away, the crowd's cheers turned to a chant. Sarah. Jake pulled her close. You okay? She kissed him. Never better. The Sycamore Ridge Community Hall was packed. Every seat filled and walls lined with neighbors clutching tissues and folded apologies. At the podium, Martin Cooper adjusted his tie, his voice trembling as he read from a prepared statement. On behalf of the HOA board, we formally apologize to Sarah and James Mitchell and to every family harmed by Eleanor Matthews' abuse of power. The crowd erupted in applause, but Sarah's eyes stayed fixed on the back row, where Greg's wife, Linda, sat rigidly, her face a mask of shame. When Martin finished, he gestured to Sarah. "Would you like to say anything?" She wheeled forward Luna, her service dog, trailing faithfully. "This apology isn't just for us. It's for the Thompsons, who lost their food truck, for the Gonzalez family, whose son dropped out of college, for everyone who thought no one would listen." She held up a stack of letters, pleas from victims across the country. Eleanor's gone, but her shadow lingers. Let's make sure no one else suffers in silence. As she spoke, a man in a hoodie slipped out the back door. Captain Rodriguez, leaning against the wall, followed. Outside, the man hurled a rock at Sarah's van before sprinting away. Rodriguez tackled him, revealing a teenager, the son of an Eleanor loyalist. "She's still got people brainwashed," Rodriguez muttered, hauling him to a squad car. Inside, Linda approached Sarah, tears streaking her makeup. "Greg's sentence is my fault. I ignored the signs." Sarah handed her a tissue. "Help us fix it. Start by telling the truth about elite property management." The apology ended not with closure, but a call to action. Sarah's inbox overflowed with pleas. "My HOA towed my dialysis van. They fined me for a ramp." One email stood out. A video from a veteran in Ohio. His wheelchair trapped in snow after the HOA banned unsightly salt bins. Melissa, the reporter, filmed Sarah's response. "You're becoming a national figure," she said. "How does that feel?" "Terrifying," Sarah admitted. "But if my voice helps one person sleep at night, worth it." That week, Sarah testified before the state legislature. HOA should protect, not punish. Let's pass laws to cap fines, ban discriminatory towing, and mandate ADA compliance. The room burst into applause, except for a stone-faced lobbyist in a black suit. Afterward, he cornered her. "You're making enemies, Ms. Mitchell. Ever heard of accidents?" Sarah didn't flinch. "I've survived worse." But that night, Luna growled at a figure lurking outside their home. Jake grabbed a bat, but the intruder vanished, leaving a note. "Stop now, or lose more than a van." Sarah forwarded it to Rodriguez. "They're scared. Let's keep them that way." The new HOA board's first act was to dismantle Eleanor's surveillance system. Cameras came down, replaced by sunflower gardens and a community bulletin board. But trust was fragile. Mrs. Kim, who'd once reported Sarah's ramp, now hosted tea in her backyard. "I believed Eleanor's lies," she confessed, serving Sarah matcha. "But your playground, my granddaughter uses it." "Thank you." Sarah sipped, her guard softening. "We're all learning." At the clubhouse, Frank trained a ragtag neighborhood watch. Teens on bikes, retirees with walkie-talkies. "No more spies," he declared. "We protect each other." But not everyone embraced change. A flyer appeared overnight. "Stop the Mitchell madness. Save our property values." The culprit? Linda's brother, a realtor fearing HOA reforms. Sarah confronted him at his office. "You profit off fear. We're building something better." He sneered. "Enjoy your crusade. It won't last." As she left, Sarah spotted a familiar black SUV idling nearby. Not again. The annual Sycamore Ridge barbecue returned. This time as a victory lap. Grills sizzle with Frank's rebel ribs. Kids raced through sprinklers, and the accessible playground echoed with laughter. Sarah sat with Jake, watching Luna chase butterflies. "Remember our first week here?" Jake mused. "I thought we'd made a mistake." Sarah squeezed his hand. Turns out they did. But the peace shattered when smoke billowed from the clubhouse. Neighbors screamed, clutching children as flames licked the walls. Sarah dialed 911 while Jake and Frank grabbed fire extinguishers. Inside, they found the source, a smoldering pile of HOA rulebooks doused in lighter fluid. A note pinned to the door. "This is just the start." As firefighters doused the blaze, Sarah spotted Linda's brother filming. "Insurance scam?" she challenged. He smirked. "Prove it." But the crowd wasn't fooled. "We'll rebuild." Mr. Thompson shouted, sparking a chant. "Stronger, stronger." The barbecue ended not with fear, but defiance. Months later, Sarah sat on her porch, Luna at her feet, reviewing blueprints for a new community center. Eleanor's trial had ended with a 15-year sentence. Greg's appeal was denied. The black SUV? Traced to a lobbying firm now under investigation. Jake joined her, handing her lemonade. "Think we're done?" Sarah laughed. "We're just getting started." She pointed to a stack of letters, requests from HOAs in 3 states asking for her help. But first, she nodded to the playground, where kids' laughter rang out. "This matters more." Frank hobbled over, toasting with his flask. To the troublemakers. As dusk fell, Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Need your help. Our HOA president is worse than Eleanor." She showed Jake. "Another fight?" Sarah smiled. "Always." The screen faded to black as Luna's bark echoed into the night.